Hello and welcome, Wadzanai Garwe. I'm so excited that we managed to have this conversation. And I'm Isaac Jonas, and I'm gonna be having this conversation with Wadzanai, an economist who currently works for the Food and Agricultural Organization. And she has over 35 years of experience working in development. So, Wazana's story is very inspiring. I've been following her story, particularly on LinkedIn, and I was connected to her through a friend, and I've been following the work that she does. So today I'm going to have a conversation about her career from Zimbabwe to many other countries that she has worked with, so that probably you can get some insights on how to accomplish that kind of success, and also about personal finance. So welcome, Wazanai. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Isaac. I am so honored to be asked to speak on your podcast. And I'm specifically honored to be a woman being asked to speak about finance.
Yes.
As I have told you before, um, when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, I was born in 1966. We never saw female role models who were handling their own finances. The people I saw were always married, or it was after they were widowed. And so I never had a role model that said to me, I'm a woman. I started saving and investing, and, I made it by myself. It was always, it had come through inheritance, or there was always a man involved.
That was in Zimbabwe, right?
That was in Zimbabwe. I was born in Bulawayo, and my dad and my mom were teaching and nursing. So my dad was a teacher, and at the time that I was born, he was teaching in Umzingwani, which is in Matabeleland, a province of Zimbabwe. And my mom was a nurse. So I was born, and my parents were professionals. They were civil servants. And at the time, it was Rhodesia, which was apartheid, the equivalent of apartheid. So the only professionals we ever saw at that time were teachers, nurses, lawyers, only male doctors. Females were never doctors.
Wow.
And administrators, because the Africans were meant to look after themselves, stay healthy, be able to eat, but they could not have any other careers than careers that served the Rhodesian government. Poverty is a disease I don't want to catch.
Yes.
Right?
Wow.
So I was brought up by civil servants. My parents were middle class. And one of the things I think people always say to me, how do you understand? How do you speak to a child that comes out of poverty, right?
Yes.
If you were always coming from a middle class background.
Yes.
And my answer to that is nobody chooses who or how they are born, right?
Yes.
You have no choice about where you're born. You have no choice about who gives birth to you. You have no choice about where you come from.
Yes.
You do have a choice about where you end up.
Very true.
Your beginnings have nothing to do with where you end up. Poverty is a mindset, Isaac.
Yes, I agree.
And I always say to people, poverty is a disease I don't want to catch.
Yes.
Right? And it's a disease I don't want to catch because the minute you have a poverty mindset,
yes,
everything starts with I cannot.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I have no opportunities. I cannot. Other people are luckier than me. All those things feed into that conversation. So I was born to a middle class family, and I was very lucky because my parents were mavericks. They believed in um, challenging the system and taking risks.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do I mean by that?
Mm.
My parents put me into a multiracial school during an apartheid era.
Mm-hmm.
I became the only black child in a white school.
Mm.
And if my parents had not taken the risk and even applied,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
I would never have even had the chance to go to the school. So it starts with the action taken by a person
Yes.
for something to happen. So my parents decided that our children are going to have the best education
Mm-hmm.
possible that they can afford.
Yes.
And when we talk about investing, Isaac, I
Yes.
think the most important thing is what are your values,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
I was taught to value integrity.
Mm.
I was taught to value people.
Mm-hmm.
I was taught that no matter where a person is in their life, right?
Yes.
Whether a person is a domestic worker or a
Mm-hmm.
cleaner or a manual
Mm-hmm.
laborer,
Yeah.
or they are the president of a country or they are a CEO, that person contributes something.
Yes. Yes.
And you have to respect them in that, whatever their profession is.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taught, if you take it into account that I was the daughter ultimately of a minister, my father
Yes.
ended up as a minister of education. He was
Zimbabwe.
also an ambassador.
Mm.
He was one of the first ambassadors
Wow.
uh, for, from Zimbabwe to the Republic of Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
And then he became the ambassador to the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taught that it's not about the position, it's about the person.
Mm-hmm.
So once you understand what your values are, you then have to understand where you are
Mm-hmm.
in the hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
So for me, Isaac, I would
Mm-hmm.
say if somebody wants to say, but I have no money, my job sucks,
Yes.
I live in a volatile economy,
Yes.
Zimbabwe aite, which is
Yes.
translated into Zimbabwe is really difficult.
It's tough.
It's tough. I always say that these are excuses.
Yes.
They're excuses because, as I said, it's a mindset.
Yes.
One of the most important things is we've been taught by biology,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And we've been taught by Maslow's hierarchy of needs
Yes.
that we have a hierarchy, right?
Yes.
And you have to first safeguard your shelter,
Mm-hmm.
your clothing, your
Basic
food,
needs.
your
Mm-hmm.
education, your
Yes.
health, right?
Yes.
So you have to have a home or a roof over your head.
Yes.
You have to be able to feed yourself and
Yes.
people that you love, and
Yes.
you've got to be able to eat and clothe and live, right?
Mm. Yes.
So these are the basics of what you do
Fundamentals.
in life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So my parents um, taught us that when you are living your life at any given moment,
Mm-hmm.
you must live as if you're going to die. So my father always used to say, if you die today, what
Mm.
have you left as a legacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen a lot of issues and stories, Isaac, where
Yes.
a person we thought was extremely wealthy
Yes.
dies,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the family falls apart.
There's not even a will, I guess.
There's no will.
Yeah.
There's not even money to bury the man, right?
Ah, wow. Unfortunate.
Because that person lacked foresight.
Yes.
So when we look at my life, so
Yes.
I started my life in a multiracial school. I was the only black girl in an
Yes.
all-white school. It was a
Yes.
Dominican convent school.
Yes.
Um, and my parents always put us in uncomfortable places. They took risks.
Mm-hmm.
They forced us to be exemplary, but
Yes.
also to be exceptional.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So they were always forcing us. I think I said to you before, my
Yes.
mother taught me, you've got to think like a white man,
What
right?
did she
And
mean
I
with that?
always used to, and I always used to wonder,
Yeah.
why did she pick a white man? I'm a woman,
Yes.
I'm a
Yes.
girl,
Yes.
right? And where I was brought up during apartheid, the white man was the top of the pyramid.
Mm.
A white man was in control. This
Yes.
was the height of white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at how our society was structured,
Yes.
it was the white man,
Mm-hmm.
then the madam, the white
Mm-hmm.
woman.
Yes.
Then it was the Indian man
Mm-hmm.
and or Indian or Asian man and the
Yes.
Asian woman, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then it was the mixed raced man, we call them
Yes.
colors,
Yes.
and then the mixed raced woman, and
Yes.
then it was the African man, and then the African woman.
Yes.
So the African woman was the bottom of the pile.
Wow.
They were eight, right?
Yes.
So my mother was saying to me, when you aim, you've got to aim to the pinnacle,
Yes.
which is a white male,
Yes.
not even a white female, but a white male. And
Mm-hmm.
so she was teaching me that the thought processes and the way I think and the way I approach life has to approach life as that person
Mm-hmm.
who has the most privilege,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
As opposed to the woman who is the most disadvantaged, who's the black woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? So already we're talking about taking away the poverty mindset,
Yes.
right? She was like, I am not prepared for you to fail.
Yes.
Your goal is that pinnacle.
Yes.
And this is what I'm setting you up to do. Another thing that I grew up not understanding or not even conceptualizing
Mm-hmm.
were gender roles.
Mm-hmm.
My parents both looked after us. So my father, when my mother would do night duty, she was a
Mm-hmm.
nurse.
Yes.
It was my father who cooked for us. It was my father who cleaned. It was my father who fed us. It was my father who ironed his own shirts.
Even as an ambassador, I must
Even
say.
as an ambassador,
Mm-hmm.
imagine, even as a minister,
Yes.
right? It
Yes.
was my father who took us to football games.
Yes.
We used to watch Dynamos, which was one of the most important teams. It
Yes.
was my father who, so I came from a family where there was never this belief
Mm-hmm.
that only a man did certain things or
Yes.
only a woman did certain things.
Yes.
To show you how amazing my parents were, my
Mm-hmm.
mother was one of the first women to drive in Zimbabwe in
Mm-hmm.
1966.
Mm-hmm.
And she still has her driver's license now.
Lovely.
She's one of the first African women to get a driver's license and drive herself to work. So I'm showing you that the bar that my parents set
Mm-hmm.
was always high.
Yes.
Mediocrity was not accepted in my family.
So maybe if I may follow up, sorry to
Yes,
kind of interject. So you went to the United States and you studied in finance, and at some point, as you told me, you got a job at Wall Street. Do you wanna walk us through that experience, what it was like, and also now you are the president of the Federation, um, which is, represents a lot of organizations, including folks from United Nations, Food and Agriculture Organization. So you are the president. So this is a daughter for Mrs. and Mr. Garwe in Zimbabwe. Now you are based in Rome. For a girl child or a boy child, seeing this, for me, I'm inspired, quite frankly.
a
Yes.
catastrophic event can change the course of your life.
What can you say has enabled you to be able to wear this hats, be amongst, these accomplished people and still be you?
I think the most important thing, Isaac, I go back to the values,
Yeah.
right? My parents valued education.
Yes.
And I think one of the most important things in life
Hmm.
is an education
Mm.
because an education provides you with freedom,
Yes.
freedom of choice.
Yes.
It provides you with the freedom to live and to leave
Mm-hmm.
spaces that are not good for you, right?
Yes. Yes.
And education provides you the ability to compete
Yes.
nationally and internationally,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Interesting.
So all my education from primary to high school was in Zimbabwe. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely Zimbabwe educated
Mm-hmm.
through the Dominican convent school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having been educated like that, as I told you, my father became ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
So he moved to the US when
Yes.
I had just finished high school.
Okay.
So I did a degree in finance. Now, one
Wow.
of the things that I love, Isaac,
Yes.
is reading.
Mm.
And a lot of people who say, how can I get access to anything?
Mm.
Especially now with
Yes.
social media, right?
Internet.
If you think in 1966 I had to go in the 70s when I went to school, we
Yes.
had to go to a library
Mm-hmm.
and we had to go to an encyclopedia, right? Our Google were several books called encyclopedias.
Encyclopedia Britannica, I think that's why it was called, right?
Exactly, exactly. So there was no Google. So everything that we did was manual and
Yes.
we had to find it in a book,
Mm.
right? It was
Yes.
called an encyclopedia or a dictionary or something, but you had to research it.
Yes.
There is no excuse for the current generation not to read or not
Yes.
to find things
Yes.
because Google is your friend and Google is free, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I would say that by reading,
Mm.
I got this overwhelming knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yes.
wasn't that I was reading scientific books or school books. I was just reading novels. I love crime
Mm.
novels,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
in reading these crime novels, I was taken to other worlds
Mm-hmm.
and I saw other places.
Yes.
So what is really important, Isaac, is that
Mhm.
through reading and through studying,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I got a scholarship with Heinz
Wow.
for my first degree. So even though my father had got me a place at the University of Maryland,
Yes.
not got me a place, he was paying for a place at the University of Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
I managed to get a scholarship from Heinz.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did not have to burden my parents
Mm-hmm.
with university fees because in the States, university fees are very, very,
Oh, it
very
can
expensive.
be very, very high for sure. You're
Exactly.
talking of
So by
couple of thousands of dollars, 30, 40, 50,000, or even
exactly
two, 400,000 actually, for to complete a 4-year degree.
a 4-year degree, right?
Yes.
And so by getting this degree and by having excelled even at school, at high school,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was able to get a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And through the scholarship, I was able to get a degree in finance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I studied finance because I love money,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
I had always admired the freedom that comes from having money,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I had always seen that people who have money, and I'll go back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When my father was made ambassador to Kenya,
Kenya.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It was 1982.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Form 4,
Mm.
and I traveled to Kenya with my parents, but I was still studying in Zimbabwe. So I would
Mm.
come at the holidays. And it's the first time, Isaac, I saw
Mm.
Black excellence.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time I saw Africans
Yes.
as politicians, Africans as heads of
Lawyers.
industry,
Yes.
Africans as lawyers. They were running the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I was coming from a country, remember, where we had been told that a country can't be run except by white people.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to Kenya, I
Mm-hmm.
saw Black excellence, I saw African excellence,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw it in all fields, but I also saw rich Africans, right?
Yes.
I saw an African who drove his own car or her own car. I saw wealth. I saw
Wow.
African wealth.
Yeah.
And that was a huge eye opener for me, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's so as we're talking, Isaac, and I know it's a conversation.
Yes.
I've talked about values, and I told you integrity and education.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I would say is a person needs to travel.
Yes, I
You
agree.
have to travel to see other places
Other
in order
cultures.
to learn new things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it doesn't mean you have to travel to Europe. I
Yes.
traveled in Africa. My
Mm-hmm.
first my first flight was to Kenya, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yet Kenya had such an impression on me
Mm.
because I saw black excellence
Mm-hmm.
in Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
And then read. You have
Yes.
to read.
Yes.
Everything is in a book. And unfortunately, we are told that for an African, I remember there's a saying where it says, if you want to hide something from an African, put it in a book,
And put it in the
right?
middle.
Yeah, because it means that Africans don't read. Today,
Generally. Yes.
actually,
Mm-hmm.
Isaac, my
Yes.
wealth advisor, he always puts these WhatsApp status
Yes.
things on his thing. Do
Mm-hmm.
you know that the number of millionaires grew in Asia, in Europe,
Yes.
and in the Americas,
Yes.
but Africa, the number of billionaires reduced
Why is that so?
because of the way we're investing,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the way that Africans see investments. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so I think it's really important that when you are looking at your values as a person, no matter what your family setup looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether
Yes.
you come from poverty or you come from a middle class background, you need to decide who you are and what you want to be as a person.
I
I
agree.
told you I didn't want to be poor,
Yes.
and I wanted to have choices, the ability to make choices.
Yes.
So I chose finance
Yes.
because I loved finance. I wanted to find out about investment. So when I finished my degree, my father was brought back to Zimbabwe as the chief
Mm-hmm.
of protocol.
Okay.
So I came back with him because I had got a job on Wall Street, but my father refused for me to take that job because he said I would be lost in the States,
Sorry to
right?
interject. Do you want to,
Yes.
what is Wall Street, so that at least just to make sure?
Yeah. So Wall Street is where the top investors work, right?
Yes.
It's where stocks and shares and investment banking
Goldman and
is done,
Sachs, you find all
and
these
Goldman
big
Sachs,
banks,
exactly.
JP Morgan, Maryland Lynch, New York Stock
All these banks.
Exchange. That is the financial district.
So I had got a job because when we were in our last year of college,
Yes.
we had to do an investment portfolio.
Yes.
And ours was one of the best. And I was an African girl. They didn't have a lot of African girls. And so I was in demand,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But I showed my father, I said, I've got a job on Wall Street. And he said, no, I'm not leaving you in America. You will change. You will not have a life. You
Wow.
will be forever following the buck, right? That's what
Wow.
my father said, the buck
Yes.
being money.
Yes.
So I came back to Zimbabwe. When I got to Zimbabwe, Isaac, there
Yeah.
was no investment banking.
Yes.
The only thing that existed was retail banking,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
So my first job was as a clerk for Beverly Building Society,
Mm-hmm.
and I hated it. I was not an accountant. I didn't want to balance books. I didn't
Yes.
want to do, you know, when you do the
Clerical
accounting
accounting manually or even.
manual,
Yeah.
exactly. So I left that job within a week. I couldn't. It didn't suit my personality. Hated it.
Yeah.
And I walked into a recruiter and I said I need a new job. And the recruitment company said to me, "Oh no, there's the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees is hiring,
Yes.
and they want a program assistant."
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is 1989 in Zimbabwe,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
There's no people don't even know about computers,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
had computer skills. And
Yes.
one of the things that I have to tell you about, Isaac, I
Yes.
forgot.
Mm-hmm.
When we got to Kenya with my parents,
Yes.
I had finished O level, right?
Yes.
And sorry, when we got to Kenya, I hadn't finished. I was going to O levels,
Okay.
but my parents, we got to Kenya and they needed us to do something, right?
Yes.
So my father sent us to a typing course,
Oh,
so I would get typing skills, right?
wow.
Because at the time we used to use typewriters,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so we got the type. I went and I got the ability to type. So I learned to touch type very
Yes.
fast.
Yes.
When I got to the States, computers were just starting.
Yes.
So everything we did had to be done
Type
on computer.
written. Yes.
So my typing skills came in handy,
Yes.
right? And so when I got to Zimbabwe and I got this job because I had the computer skills, but I also had, the finance degree.
Yes.
And my first boss used to say to me, the computer that we had at UNHCR, as it called, it
Yes.
was called a WANG, right? A WANG
Yes.
computer. So my boss used to say, "What the WANG this for me, please." In other words, type it up and
Type
send it
it
for
for
me.
me. Okay.
So,
Interesting.
so, so, so at that point, I wasn't using my finance at all, right?
Yes. Yes.
I had completely switched to programming. I
Mm-hmm.
was looking after programs for 150,000 refugees, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is when I got my second lesson in life.
Mm-hmm.
So the first was to see Africans in Nairobi
Mm-hmm.
be in all walks of life,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The second was when I worked with refugees, and in a refugee setting, Isaac,
Mm.
these people had run away, the Mozambicans had run away from a civil war,
Mm.
and they had to leave everything. When
Mm-hmm.
I mean everything, they ran away with the clothes on their back.
Wow.
So when they were living in a camp in Zimbabwe,
Mm-hmm.
and they would get 20 liters of water a day to
Mm-hmm.
do everything: cook, clean, flush the toilet, everything. 20 liters per person per day.
That's it. Wow.
Imagine, they got their food ration, right?
Mm.
So imagine you are a doctor who has left your country because you've been a refugee.
Yeah.
You come into this refugee camp and you are being treated like a child. You're being given 20 liters of water, 20 liters of water per day, and you're being given ration food. You
Mm-hmm.
can't choose the food you like,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
So my second lesson in life was that life will life you, right? No
Yes.
matter how you do things, no matter how you plan,
Mm-hmm.
right? A
Yes.
catastrophic event can change the course of your life.
Mm-hmm.
These Mozambicans were living their best lives in their country. A
Yes.
civil war broke out
Yeah.
and they were left with nothing.
Yes.
So I understood from my second lesson
Mm-hmm.
that even if you play safe in life,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
If you
Yes.
take no risks and you do everything the right way,
Mm-hmm.
some catastrophe can take you out and you're left with nothing,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
So I needed to learn how to insure against mitigating these risks, right?
Uncertainties.
So,
Yes.
so the second thing I learned was you need to always do risk mitigation. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to look at risk mitigation strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the strategies is people always say to us, you must save. Every investment advisor that you'll ever get will tell you must save.
There for the
In
rain day.
Zimbabwe,
Mm-hmm.
in Zimbabwe, somebody will say to you, but how can I save when the money loses value,
Yes.
right? Actual cash can be RTGS today, it can be a ZIG tomorrow, it can be
Yes.
a bond note.
Yes.
Buy assets that you can liquidate,
I'm getting
right?
a notification, sorry to interject here, that we are about to run out of time. So, okay. Uh,
What we'll do if we run out, we'll
yep,
start it.
you can go
So
now.
Isaac, I learned to mitigate risk, right?
Yes.
And then I was talking about saving and uncertainty.
Yes.
In Zimbabwe, buy assets that you can liquidate, right?
Yes.
So assets can be livestock assets,
Yes.
cows, goats, chickens,
Mm-hmm.
Those are assets
Yes.
that you can liquidate. A car is not an asset,
Yes.
right?
Unless
Now
it's for
remember that
business.
unless it's for business.
Yes.
However, if you want to save and invest in things like your cows in uncertain areas. Save in assets that you can liquidate quickly, and then those that will take time, like property takes time, right? You
Yes.
can't sell a house immediately, so
Yes.
those are longer term assets. So my second lesson was risk mitigation,
Mm-hmm.
because you could lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
My third lesson,
Mm.
Isaac,
Mm-hmm.
was the fact that you need to have the values that you believe in and invest in what you believe in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
for me, I believed in education. So
Mm-hmm.
I invested in my children's education.
Mm-hmm.
I invested in my own education.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a first degree, I got a master's.
First
I
degree.
made sure that I kept upgrading my skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I always,
Mm.
Isaac,
Yes.
changed and challenged myself. So I've never stayed in one job for 10 years,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because even though I'm working in the United Nations now,
Yes.
I started in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
I have moved 6 times
Wow.
within the same organization.
Mm-hmm.
I was hired as an economist working in Africa,
Mm.
right?
Wow.
I then moved to become an investment support officer working.
Wow.
So first I worked in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
I then went to South Africa.
Wow.
I then came back and worked in the strategy division.
Mm-hmm. That was in Rome
I
again.
then, that was in Rome again. I then went and worked in Asia and the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked in places like Fiji, Samoa,
Mm-hmm.
places you've never heard,
Yes.
right? I then
Yes.
came back to work in Africa.
Yes.
And as I was working in Africa, I am now, as I speak, the
Mm-hmm.
president of the Federation of International Civil
Wow.
Servants Associations, which you would call me the head trade unionist, right?
Yes. Wow.
So never get comfortable
Mm.
in what you're doing.
Yes.
Even as an investment advisor, Isaac, you
Mm-hmm.
have to plan for uncertainty. The
That's true.
world right now is very uncertain.
That's true.
And yet, people make money
Out of
at the
that.
most uncertain times, right?
Yes,
During
because there's
times
a
of
lot of
war,
fear. Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of fear.
Yes.
So I would say the non-negotiable
Mm-hmm.
for a person who wants to plan their life, their financial life,
Yes.
a will. You have
Mm.
to have a will. I
Very
don't care
important.
how old you are. I don't care if you only own a pair of shoes.
Yes.
A will gives you the right to gift to whoever you want the
Yes.
things you have worked for.
Yes.
You need to have insurance.
Yes.
In our context, funeral insurance,
Yes.
because one of the biggest costs we ever have is burying each other.
Yes.
You have to have life insurance.
Yes.
For example, ensure that you have um, an insurance that covers any debts you might have in your debt,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
that whoever is inheriting whatever property you have does not inherit your debts as well. So
Yes.
insure whatever debt you have. At a
Mm-hmm.
bank, if you're borrowing, if you're mortgaging, they will insure your mortgage,
Yes.
right? Make
Yes.
sure you have that.
Mm.
Um, Another thing, savings. And I
Yes.
talked about the types of savings you have.
Yes.
You need to have savings
Yes.
and you need to start investing as soon as you can.
Take
Imagine if
advantage.
you
Mm-hmm.
invest $20 a month,
It's
right?
a
Or
lot
even
over time.
it's a lot
Yes.
over time in stock. And remember, stocks and shares are long term.
Yes.
So invest and forget.
Yes.
Don't touch that money. Just keep investing it and
Mm.
forget.
Yes.
And study,
Mm.
study, study, right?
Yes.
If you cannot afford an investment advisor, YouTube is your friend.
Yes.
You know, Google is your friend,
Yes.
but always get expert advice. I would never invest for myself, Isaac. I
Yes.
don't have the time,
Even though you're an
right?
economist. Yes.
Even though I'm an economist, I studied finance. It's not my forte. I have not been working in
Yes.
finance at
Yes.
all. I've been working
Yes.
in development. If you
Yes.
ask me how to do a project proposal, I
Yes.
can do it, right?
Yes.
But if you ask me to work out an investment portfolio,
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that.
Yes.
So invest in your learning and
Mhm.
invest in experts and specialists,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Get a wealth manager. And I don't know if I still have time, Isaac.
You have about
At different
2 minutes for sure.
at different times of your life,
Hmm.
right? You need to think about different things.
Hmm.
I plan my life in 10-year cycles.
Mm.
So I am now planning my life. I'm now planning for retirement.
Yes.
I'm retiring at 62.
Mm.
I actually have 1,571 days left until
Wow.
retirement.
You know even the days. That's
I know the days
incredible. Wow.
because because I started planning for my retirement
Wow.
7 years ago, right?
Mm.
Because I had finished educating my children.
Mhm.
I had finished all the peripheral things that I needed to do.
Yes.
And now I said, what do I want my next stage of my life to look like?
Mm.
And
Interesting.
so I started planning for my retirement 7 years ago.
Hmm.
So by the time I get to 62, it'll be my 10-year horizon. And
Wow.
then I will plan again for how many years for the next decade, right? I'm
Yes.
58 now.
Hmm.
I think, and one of the most important things, Isaac,
Hmm.
about investment and life
Hmm.
is to enjoy it. As
Yes.
I say, live as if you're going to die today. And if
Yes.
you die today, are you prepared for that death?
Yes. Do you have a legacy?
Wakarongeka
Yes.
ere,
Do you have a
you know?
legacy?
Exactly. And the legacy doesn't have to be something important.
Hmm.
It's just to leave your family without trauma.
Yes.
Imagine the trauma of trying to sort out the life of somebody who has not left a will. That's trauma.
Wow. Thank you so much. Sorry, I have to thank you before we run out of time, but I really want to appreciate you and hopefully we'll bring you back to the podcast because you have so much to share. Thank you so much, Wazanai.